Good day with your major newscast. I am Jessica Daw. First with the highlights. The Working People's Alliance says there must be a new voters list before the next local government elections. The Guyana Teachers Union says the process of licensing teachers is not a quick fix and cannot be implemented immediately in Guyana. Farmers in the East Coast village of Victoria to benefit from better drainage as emergency work is set to begin within days. The international global energy consultancy firm Rystad Energy estimates that Guyana will earn around $130 billion in oil revenues over the next 20 years. In the region, Prime Minister of the Bahamas, Philip Davis, is in quarantine. The Trinidad government will not withdraw its vaccination policy for public sector employees. And internationally, officials say at least 37 people have been killed and about 100 others injured after a packed ferry caught fire in southern Bangladesh. The details of these stories and more in just a moment.
Advertise with us on News Talk Radio Guyana 103.1 FM for best coverage on programs on motivation, beauty and health, parenting and relationships, knowing your rights, and a variety of enlightening content, and get value for your money. Call our helpful staff today on 223-1056 or 223-1041 today.
Now for the news in detail. The Working People's Alliance WPA says there must be a new voters list before the next local government elections. Recently appointed Chief Election Officer Vishnu Prasad has said that local government elections can be held next year. But the WPA says that at a minimum, these elections should be held with a brand new voters list. That party says that this should be the bottom line for all forces concerned with transparent elections. According to the WPA, there can be no democratic elections with a list as bloated as the current one. The WPA flagged the governing People's Progressive Party for not including the creation of a new voters list as part of its proposal on electoral reform. The WPA says it intends to join with other forces in the struggle for a new voters list and give the Guyana Elections Commission the power to determine the timetable for elections by consensus rather than solely by the government. The elections for neighborhood and town councils should be held this year. Should have been held this year, rather. However, they were not held because the Elections Commission had determined the services of the Chief and Deputy Chief Election Officers and the Region 4 Returning Officer. The Guyana Teachers Union GTU says the process of licensing teachers is not a quick fix and that it cannot be implemented immediately in Guyana. In an invited comment by News Talk Radio Guyana 103.1 FM via telephone, President of the GTU Mark Light says there are several issues that must be worked out before the system can work in Guyana. The GTU president says first there must be an equal standard of operating in all schools, which is not the case. Mr. Light pointed to different standards of operation of teachers and school in Georgetown, on the coast and the hinterland. The GTU president says a licensing process cannot now be used to evaluate all teachers operating under different circumstances. He says there is a need for a standard form of appraisal for teachers and consultants with all stakeholders. Mr. Light says arriving at the stage to license teachers is a long process, which the GTU does not foresee happening in a few weeks or months. He says while the GTU is aware of the system being used in other countries, those countries have a standard by which all their schools operate, which is where Guyana needs to be first before considering licensing teachers. Farmers at Victoria Village East Coast Demerara to soon see emergency drainage works in the community in the coming days. Agriculture Minister Zulfikar Mustafa visited the farming community on Wednesday, where he witnessed firsthand and heard from farmers in the village of poor drainage due to clogged drainage canals. During a meeting Wednesday afternoon with the farmers, the Agriculture Minister told the farmers that most of their drainage woes will soon be behind them in the coming week, as emergency drainage works will commence within the next 3 to 5 days. Farmers aired their dissatisfaction with the lack of proper drainage, which always resulted in their farms being completely flooded when the rain persisted. In addition to drainage works being carried out, the Agriculture Minister informed the farmers that the National Agriculture Research and Extension Institute, NARI, will conduct a needs assessment to determine how many farmers suffered losses, after which the ministry will make available planting materials and fertilizers so that farmers can return to the land as soon as possible. He told residents that farmers who lost livestock were also assured that following a similar assessment, the ministry will work to offer assistance to farmers who suffered losses. He also promised to engage the ministers of Public Works to visit the area to address issues with the roadways in the village. The international global energy consultancy firm, Rystad Energy, estimates that Guyana will earn about $130 billion in oil revenues over the next 20 years. Head of Latin America research at Rystad Energy, Scragner Parker, gives this projection based on if the already discovered estimated 10 billion barrels of oil equivalent are extracted. Nearly half of Guyana's 750,000 persons live on an average of $6 per day. But University of Guyana economist Dr. Thomas Singh has told the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation that he is not sure that Guyana can handle all of that oil wealth. He is also skeptical, saying that it is difficult to say this bonanza will transform Guyana into a developed nation. ExxonMobil Guyana says that the company has had a safe year of operations in line with its commitment to nobody gets hurt. Recalling the safety performance for the year, President of ExxonMobil Alistair Routledge disclosed that there were hundreds of days across offshore operations without a recordable safety incident. He says the crew on board the Liza Destiny FPSO, for instance, has reached more than 800 days without a recordable incident. There are 6 drill ships and now 2 floating production, storage, and offloading vessels in the Stabroek Block offshore Guyana, which are supported by more than 1,000 persons at any time given. ExxonMobil Guyana has recorded multiple discoveries in the Stabroek Block in 2021, which increased the recoverable resource estimate to approximately 10 billion oil equivalent barrels. The company currently produces
cases over the last 24 hours. And of the 741 cases that we currently have, 386 of those cases are in Region 4, with 162 being in Region 6. We also have 85 cases in Region 3 and 29 cases in Region 10.
The health minister pleaded with persons who are unvaccinated and those who have taken one dose to be fully vaccinated, as he detailed the number of COVID vaccines administered.
Overall in the country, we would have administered 764,898 vaccines as a total amount of vaccines that we have given. If we break that down, we would have given 440,072 doses as a first dose vaccine. Second dose vaccine would have been 314,356. So these numbers are really for persons 12 years and older. And we have started to administer booster doses. We're now at 10,470 booster doses.
The ministry has recorded 2 unvaccinated deaths, which pushes the death toll to 1,042. Now for the news in the region. The Prime Minister of the Bahamas, Philip Davis, is in quarantine. Our Bahamas news reports that he decided to go into quarantine after coming into contact with a number of COVID-19 infected relatives. He says that the government has since intensified preparations as the Omicron variant continues to spread globally. Here are details from Jasmine Brown.
The Prime Minister using his family situation to point out just how dire the COVID situation has become seemingly overnight as he asks Bahamians to act responsibly this holiday season. COVID cases have doubled and tripled over the last few days. On Thursday, the Bahamas recorded 140 cases, up from 79 cases recorded the day before. The Davis family has been impacted as well following a family gathering.
Last weekend, we had a family gathering, which included several family members who traveled here from abroad. Even though everyone was vaccinated and everyone tested negative before travel, several of those who are visiting from abroad tested positive on the 5th day after arrival in the country. Since then, my wife and other family members have tested positive. I remain negative. Because they were vaccinated, they are either asymptomatic or are experiencing only mild symptoms. I'm so grateful that that is the case.
As cases climb, Davis said effective immediately, rules related to gatherings will be tightened.
We are changing the rules about the size of gatherings that are permitted. Indoor gatherings should not have more than 20 people. Outdoor gatherings no more than 30.
Travel rules will also change.
Bahamians and visitors must test negative within 3 days of entering the country instead of 5. And beginning on January 7th, a negative PCR test will be required for all.
Davis says the government is continuing to progress with free COVID testing and is getting ready to mobilize multiple field hospitals should hospitalizations spike. He says plans are underway to utilize the nursing school and the national stadium, and the government is in discussions with an international partner to open a field hospital in Grand Bahama. In the meantime, he says Bahamians should prepare for the worst. Reporting for our news, I'm Jasmine Brown.
Trinidad and Tobago's Attorney General Faraz Al-Rawi says he has told the trade unions that the government will not back down from its vaccination policy. Details from TT News Online.
Mr. Roger very plainly and very frankly informed me that the unions, as he spoke for them, do not trust the government, do not trust the Prime Minister, and do not trust the data.
Attorney General Faraz Al-Rawi says despite many unions being present at a meeting to discuss government's impending policy on vaccinations for public sector workers, Joint Trade Union Movement leader Ansel Roger was the lone voice that had 2 demands of government.
1, withdraw its policy, and 2, provide empirical evidence that the vaccines will stop people from getting COVID and stop infections.
However, Mr. Al-Rawi said government's position was clear and pointed out that the vaccine does not prevent someone from getting COVID, but reduces the dependency on hospitals.
The government's policy, quite simply, its sole and primary purpose is to save lives. The data before us is that 9 out of 10 people in the ICU unit are unvaccinated.
The Attorney General confirmed that government's policy would not require support from the opposition.
I am confident that it is of course a rights issue. It is a constitutional issue. It does not require a special majority.
He added that the unions did not want to talk about anything other than withdrawing the policy and had no recommendations with regards to a way forward. The AG said he is pleading with the unions to provide suggestions on the issue and is hopeful that the unions will provide a response.
The several trade unions which Mr. Roger spoke for and on behalf of have not given the country, let alone the government, any form of recommendation as to how to treat with the reality of Omicron and COVID Omicron in today's world.
Sonolala, TTT News.
The government of Belize has decided to push back the date for the reopening of its land borders and seaports. According to Loop News, the government says, based on the formal recommendations of the COVID-19 Advisory Committee, the opening of the land borders and seaports has been postponed to February 2022. The government had initially announced that the land borders would be reopened on New Year's Day. The government says the delay in reopening will allow for the health system to better prepare for the emergence of the Omicron variant, as well as to prepare for the education system's return to hybrid learning on January 10, 2022. The Ministry of Health and Wellness says it will continue to monitor the situation very closely to ensure the integrity of Belize's health system and the welfare of the Belizeans. And lastly, in the region, users of public transportation in Jamaica can now access information about vehicles to ascertain what
at times it turns deadly. An app expected to ensure safer transportation, the TravelPal app. Developed at a cost of $2.3 million, the app will enable passengers to use their mobile device to scan the registration plates of public passenger vehicles, PPV, to verify if they are licensed by the Transport Authority. Also included in the app is a critical component called the button, which will allow passengers to send a signal to the Jamaica Constabulary Force's 119 Emergency Center, as well as their loved ones in the event of an emergency.
So it is important to us that our passengers are aware of the difference between a legal operator and an illegal one. The Transport Authority is pleased to participate in the development and execution of the TravelPal application, which we believe will revolutionize the transportation sector.
While addressing the issue of abductions, the head of the JCF's Public Safety and Traffic Enforcement Branch, PSTEB, believes the TravelPal app will remove the stigma attached to some official taxi operators.
This travel app, it is indeed a very good thing for these official taxi operators so that we can get rid of the perceptions, we can zoom in on the realities, and most of all, to ensure that we protect members of the public.
Transport and Mining Minister Robert Montague is urging citizens to download the app from the Apple Store and on Android devices from the Google Play Store. Aladdin Love for CVM Live.
Here now is your international news coming from the BBC.
Hello, this is Danielle Yawowiecka with the BBC News. A fire that swept through a crowded river ferry in southern Bangladesh has killed at least 39 people. More than 70 others were injured. Officials said the blaze on the three-decked vessel started in mid-river south of the capital Dhaka, from where Akbar Hossain reports.
The fire broke out in the ferry at 3 o'clock in the morning when most of the passengers were sleeping. More than 500 people were on board. Officials say that the fire may have started in the engine room. Many people jumped into the river to escape the flames and some of them drowned. The number of casualties is likely to increase as many of the passengers have suffered severe burns. Ferry accidents are very common in Bangladesh as safety standards are often ignored. Hundreds of people have died in similar tragedies over the last 10 years, but no one has been held to account.
China has warned Japan against politicizing sport after Tokyo said it would not be sending a government delegation to the 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing. Only some lower-level officials with links to sport will attend the Games in February. Rupert Wingfield-Hayes reports.
This announcement appears to be a bit of a Japanese diplomatic fudge. Japan will instead send its Olympic and Paralympic chiefs to Beijing and the head of the Tokyo Olympic Organising Committee, Seiko Hashimoto, who is a member of parliament for the ruling Liberal Democratic Party. The US has led the push for a diplomatic boycott of the Beijing Games, citing human rights abuses in the Chinese province of Xinjiang and the dismantling of freedoms in Hong Kong. Japan supports America's position, but Tokyo has very close economic ties with Beijing and is preparing to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the opening of official relations with the People's Republic of China in 2022.
Police in northern India have launched an investigation into alleged hate speech by Hindu fundamentalists in Uttarakhand state. They're looking into videos showing some speakers at an event in the city of Haridwar openly calling for violence against the country's Muslim minority. The footage has gone viral on social media, sparking outrage. Airlines around the world have cancelled more than 2,000 flights on Friday as the COVID-19 pandemic continues to affect Christmas travel. About 450 domestic and international flights were cancelled in the United States because of illness among crews and ground personnel due to the rapidly spreading Omicron variant. A court in Moscow has fined Google $98 million for what it said was a repeated failure to delete content that Russia deems illegal. This is the first time in Russia that a fine based on annual turnover has been imposed on a technology giant. The Russian authorities have increased pressure on technology companies this year to exert tighter control over the internet. You're listening to the World News from the BBC. Saudi Arabia has granted visas to 3 Iranian officials to work at the Organisation of Islamic Cooperation, in a rare sign of a thaw in relations between the regional rivals. The two countries broke off diplomatic ties in 2016. Lipika Pelham reports.
Today's announcement comes after the two sides held an informal meeting on the sidelines of the OIC's Council of Foreign Ministers in Islamabad on Sunday. The OIC has long been seen as a Saudi-dominated organization. Saudi Arabia tried to play down the issuing of visas to Iranian diplomats, saying it was part of a routine procedure for representatives of a member state. But regional leaders will see this as a rare sign of changing relations between the historic rivals.
Hun Manet, the eldest son of Cambodia's veteran Prime Minister Hun Sen, has received the unanimous endorsement of the ruling party to be a future prime ministerial candidate. His father, who has governed the one-party state for 36 years, signalled his support for his son's candidacy earlier this month. Christmas Eve celebrations are about to begin in Bethlehem, where hoteliers hoping for an influx of tourists have been disappointed by the renewed introduction of anti-COVID measures. Tom Bateman reports.
Manger Square in Bethlehem is its usual festive scene. A giant Christmas tree sparkling close to the Church of the Nativity, built over the grotto where Christian tradition says Jesus was born. The Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem, Pier Battista Pizzaballa, will lead the annual procession along the route believed to have been taken by Mary and Joseph. Palestinian scout bands and bagpipers will also march. The events come against a backdrop of growing concern for the town's hotels and traders, though, with recent Israeli border closures caused by the new COVID variant putting a stop to foreign tourism again across the region.
BBC News.
And that was your international news. Here now is a recap of the highlights. The Working People's Alliance says that there must be a new voters list before the next local government elections. The Guyana Teachers Union says the process of licensing teachers is not a quick fix and cannot be implemented immediately in Guyana. Farmers in the east coast village of Victoria to benefit from better drainage as emergency work is set to begin within days. The International Global Energy Consultancy Forum, Rystad Energy, estimates that Guyana will earn around $130 billion in oil revenues over the next 20 years. In the region, the Prime Minister of the Bahamas, Philip Davis, is in quarantine. The Trinidad government will not withdraw its vaccination policy for public sector employees. And internationally, officials say at least 37 people have been killed and about 100 others injured after a packed ferry caught fire in southern Bangladesh. And that was your major newscast. I am Jessica Daw.
This has been the news, compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom. For ongoing updates, visit demerarawaves.com, and you can check facebook.com/demwaves and twitter.com/demwaves.